Hey guys, Mackenzie here. Today we're going to go over some of the most commonly used poses in power and vinyasa styles of yoga. So it'll be a little bit more of a workshop style, going over a lot of the variations available in each of the poses, just so that you can find works best for you and your body. We will begin standing. So this is Tadasana. You're grounded down through all four corners of your feet. Shoulders drop down and away. In Tadasana, there's two slightly different variations. Sometimes you have palms facing forward. Sometimes palms are in. When you have your palms facing in, sometimes that's called Samasthiti. And then extended mountain is when you have your arms up overhead, reaching up tall. So you can always bring your arms out to the sides or through center. There's no right or wrong there. It uses slightly different muscles, whether you're circle sweeping or palms through center, trying to bring your forearms to touch. So sometimes that just depends on what you're guided through. Sometimes it depends on what feels good for you that day. But extended mountain, your chest is lifted. Sometimes your hands separate. But wherever you are, chest up, hips slightly forward. Also, almost used in every style of yoga is this forward fold. Your knees can bend a lot, so that really just helps bring some pressure off of your hamstrings. Maybe you're rolling out your shoulders to get settled in. One day, someday, your legs will be straight with your forehead close to your shins. And you can separate your feet. Sometimes that'll help just get some of our own body out of our way so we can get a little bit deeper into the pose with your hips higher and head heavier. Good. Eyes are usually open here so you can stay active. And halfway lifts, you're working towards a straight spine and straight legs. So use your hands on your legs for support. You might have them up on your thighs, maybe down on your shins. Good. Pressing your hips back behind, crown of your head forward, shoulders out of your ears. One day, someday, your fingertips will be on the mat, close to your toes. But wherever you are, creating that number 7 shape. Straight legs, straight spine. Up next is your high plank. Pressing the mat away, starting with your knees down. Finding a straight line from your knees through your hips and out your shoulders. We're gonna go over what a few of the different push-ups feel like with your knees down here. So maybe feet come up, slowly lower. Then imagine how much more engagement you have when you just press through the tops of your feet. So it just changes the weight distribution and the activation that way. Wherever you are, looking at the top edge of your mat, so you're finding that straight spine, belly in. Now pause at the bottom, checking in with the alignment of your arms, creating the 90-degree angle. Good. Coming up, we'll find high plank now. So knees off the ground, pressing your heels back. Gaze is still at the top edge of your mat. You might rock forward a little, really trying to get your heels stacked over your toes. Protracting through your shoulders. You might take the push-up, pause at the bottom, 90-degree angle, elbows in tight. And try to bring it back up. Then take a moment. You might sit back, roll out your wrists, take a breath, and then we'll do it again. Begin with your knees down first. Taking the chaturanga push-up, elbows in tight, belly in. We're still breathing, yeah? Now we'll try it from the high plank. Press your heels back, press the mat away. And take that chaturanga. Press back, roll it out, take a breath, and we'll meet laying down on your belly, setting up for cobra pose. You press down through the tops of your feet. Engage through the legs, so your kneecaps should lift off of your mat and then lift your chest. Gaze is up, little to no weight in the hands, so you're really using your back muscles here. And make sure you're not kinking through the neck. Gaze is forward, still breathing. And then moving into upward facing dog. Tops of your feet and hands stay where they are, and simply lift your body off of the mat. Knees and thighs off the mat, really making sure that you're not allowing anything to hang down. You're looking too far up. We'll just lose the engagement that way, losing the integrity of the posture. So check back in, lifted, take a breath. Now as you're ready, send your hips high, downward facing dog. Let's pedal it out for a moment, and we'll check in with the alignment of your feet. Placing your fists in between your toes and your heels. As you're ready, once you've checked in, walk it back forward. Press through your palms, maybe a soft bend in the knees. Take the pressure off of the hamstrings. Heels low, hips high. An easy way to check in that your hands and feet are in the right position is to simply roll forward into a high plank, stacking shoulders over the wrists, heels over the toes, and send it back. Downward facing, we'll check in one more time. Belly in, find that high plank. Gaze forward, and press it back. Downward facing dog. Take a breath here. Move on. Good. Drop your knees down to your mat and send your hips back, child's pose. So in child's pose, you'll notice that your hands and your feet stay in the same place as downward facing, even though there are a few different variations of child's pose. So sometimes you might bring your arms down by your sides to let your arms relax. The most active child's pose is to reach forward, pressing through the palms as you press your hips back, belly drawn in, then stretch through the hips. Then without moving the hands or the feet, but simply untucking the toes, you can move into downward facing dog. We'll do that a couple times, noticing how you're the same length, so the same width apart from hands to feet. And you can shake out the neck one more time as we get into downward facing dog, maybe walk it out. We'll find three-legged dog. So in three-legged dog, often the same shoulder will try to pop up as the same leg that's coming up. But in order to find the correct alignment, that slight twist through the spine, you actually keep your shoulders square. That really helps keep the pressure off of the opposite shoulder as well. You can even flex the toes to help square through the hips. We'll try the other side. Left leg is long. Notice if your left shoulder also comes up. Maybe flex the toes, and then come back to downward facing dog. Now, something else super common with three-legged dog is this thing called a California kick. So you'll notice I didn't use very many muscles to get it in there. So you really want to try to just use control to step your foot through instead of swinging it up and back. And from there, you can move up into your crescent lunge. Your front knee is stacked over your front ankle. Maybe you come down onto the back knee, keeping the same alignment, same engagement through the front leg. Gaze is forward. You might come back up into that traditional high crescent lunge, back heel over the toes. Beautiful, gaze forward, chest lifted. And we'll move back through three-legged dog using the control, not momentum. And try the other side. Notice this California kick. I'm not quite sure why it's called California kick, but it is. Okay, we'll try it with control now. Step it through, round through the spine, and then you can lift up into your high crescent lunge. Sitting low in the front leg, front knee over the front ankle, maybe even a little bit further or towards the center of the foot. You You might come down onto the knee. That is a great variation. Chest lifted, gaze lifted. You're still breathing, yeah? Maybe you come back up onto the back leg, heel over the toes. As you're ready, move through your three-legged dog, sending the leg long back behind, finding your downward facing dog. Take a breath. As you're ready, right leg long, three-legged dog, step it through with control and drop your back heel down this time. So we're moving into warrior one. So there's a couple differences from crescent lunge to warrior one. The most obvious is that your back heel is down. You want to stay strong through the back leg, so pressing through the pinky toe edge. You might check in with your hips, draw the right hip back, press the left one forward. Your hands can be at heart center. Most commonly, they're just up long, but traditionally, palms are touching, thumbs crossed. Now, as you're ready, let's move back through three-legged dog. That was great. Take a breath. And move on to the other side. Send your left leg long. Step it through. And then spin your right heel down now. Really pressing through the pinky toe edge of your foot. Reaching up tall. Your stance is probably a little bit shorter here than it was in the high crescent lunge. You might check in through your hips, draw the left hip back, right hip forward. So this is a closed hip posture. You want them square, pointing forward. Most commonly, hands are up. Traditionally, palms touching, thumbs crossed. Beautiful. Plant your hands. Then send your left leg long, moving through three-legged, use control. Find your downward facing dog. Hips high, heels low. We're gonna set up for warrior two now. Most commonly, you can come through a high crescent lunge, reaching up tall, and then spin the back heel down. So your front knee is moving towards the center of your foot. A variation here is to simply drop down onto the back knee, but still have the same alignment through the hips and through the front leg. So it takes some pressure off of the hips, especially if you're dealing with any injury. But traditionally, most commonly, you are lifted up, front knee tracking over the front toes. And you'll notice how moving through a high crescent to a warrior two, you have just about the same length in stance. So it can get a little tricky when you try to move from a warrior one to a warrior two. Your stance might feel a little bit too short, so always just being mindful of that, knowing that you might need to lengthen your stance a bit so you can settle into that deep lunge that you want in warrior two. So as you're ready, plant your hands, move through three-legged, walk it out, and we'll do the other side. You move through your high crescent lunge to settle in to start. Front knee over the front ankle, and then spin the back heel down. Settle in through the front leg. Maybe you drop down, noticing that variation, using it in your practice when you need. Your shoulders are out of your ears, gaze forward. You have the same alignment through your hips as you would in the traditional warrior two. Pressing through the palms, gaze over the front fingertips. You might swing up through a high crescent and then settle back into your warrior two. Same lengthened stance, trying to get the bottom of your front thigh parallel to the mat one day, someday. Then maybe you try going from your warrior one to warrior two. Now this might work for your body, but I personally have a little bit longer legs than I do of torso, so I have to step back to get into that correct alignment. Just finding what works for you. And as you're ready, We'll plant your hands, move through your three-legged dog. There's no rush, walk it out. Taking a few breaths, settling in. And as you're ready, you can step, float, maybe jumping to the top edge of your mat, finding a forward fold. We're going to be setting up for chair pose. Begin by finding a deep bend in your knees, head heavy, and as you're ready, lift the upper body up, sit your hips low. We'll start to check in. Weight in your heels first and foremost. You might bring your hands to your hips, noticing how you're tucking your tailbone underneath just slightly. Maybe hands come to heart center, especially if your shoulders are bugging you at all today. Take a glance down, make sure that you can see your toes in front of your knees. Beautiful. As you're ready, forward fold, head heavy, let the legs relax. Just a couple more active postures here. You can walk out in your downward facing dog. We're going to be setting up for flip dog and wild thing, just noticing the difference between the two. Move through three-legged first, so send your right leg long, and then bend the knee. Bring your heel in close to your glute and step it back behind. Line your heels and toes up like they're on railroad tracks or like skis. Send your hips high and then reach back behind you. And so this is flip dog, heels and toes in line, gaze up, feeling that awesome back bend, and then flip back over, move through three-legged. And we'll try wild thing on the right side before we move on to the other. So wild thing, just a little bit different. The front leg stays long. So on the right side, it's your left leg. So seems a little opposite as you get into it. They're just slightly different, but it is good to know the difference between the two as you move through your practice. Try the left side, left leg long. Bend the knees, stack the hips, heels and toes in line. A great way to check is to simply drop your hips down, really look at the feet, and then lift your hips back up. So everything is tracking in line, reaching back behind. Flipping back over, move through three-legged, and then we'll try wild thing on this side. I'd send the right leg long as you lift the hips and reach back behind. So slightly different, still getting the same great benefits of a back bend though. Just a couple more postures. These are some of the stretches that are often used in power and vinyasa styles. We'll begin with lizard pose. Send the right leg long and step your foot to the outside of your hands. So there are many variations here. Always having your front knee stacked over your front ankle. Maybe you're up on your hands. You might come down onto your elbows, being really mindful, especially if you're in a room that might be a little bit chilly, making sure that you're not going too far too fast. We always want to avoid injury. For something a little bit more active, you can tuck the toes, lift the back knee, and wherever you are, really engage through the left glute. Engaging the muscle on the back side of the body helps the muscle on the front side of the body relax. Now as you're ready, if you're not already there, tuck the back toes and send your right leg long. Moving through a downward facing dog, you can walk it out, and we'll do the other side. Left leg long. Step your left foot to the outside of your hands. Back knee down to begin. Front knee stacked over the front ankle. You might be up on your hands today, maybe down onto your forearms. Always knowing that you can bring a block under your forearms. That just helps to bring your mat a little bit closer to you. You might try the active variation here, tucking the back toes, lifting your back knee. Wherever you are, draw the right glute in. Feeling the stretch on the front side of the body. As you're ready, if you don't already have the back knee lifted, go that way and move through three-legged dog. The last posture, we're going to find half pigeon. Begin by sending your right leg long. Bring your right ankle in towards your left wrist. Check back in with the back foot. So you don't want your foot sickled at all. You want to make sure that your hips are square. So you don't want to drop down onto your right hip. You're lifted that way. You might even bring your hands to your hips. I usually begin my half pigeon with a little back bend. It kind of just helps me get settled in. You might stay up on your hands, maybe down onto your forearms. Your head can hang heavy. So this is a really relaxed half pigeon. Always knowing that if you have any sort of knee issues, the pressure on that front leg can feel like a bit much, so you can roll over onto your back, finding a figure 4 stretch. So your right ankle comes to the front side of your left knee. You can find a grip on the back side of your left thigh. You're getting the same stretch though. So you have your leg in that same figure 4 position. And as you're ready, just rolling back over, making your way to downward facing dog. We'll do the left side. Send your left leg long. And then bring your left ankle in towards your right wrist. Back leg is long back behind. You can even look back. Make sure your toes are not sickled in. Check in with your hips. Make sure that you're not dropping down onto the left one. I usually take my little back bend before I settle in. Maybe you're on your hands, maybe down onto your forearms. Head heavy. So your front heel can be as close to your hips as you need, but someday your front shin will actually parallel to the short edge of your mat. Maybe taking that figure 4 stretch on this side, especially if you have any knee injuries or knee issues. There's no reason to push it here. You're getting the same stretch on the back side of your left hip, settling in. And as you're ready, you can simply uncross your legs. You can finish off your practice here in an easy seated. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. It was such an honor. Namaste.